Well, good morning. It is always good to be back in Springfield, especially when the leaves on the trees look as they do for my drive here. It took me just a little longer because I wanted to live in the moment of just a few of them. Earlier this week, John texted or emailed or something and wanted to know what I was talking about this particular Sunday because he's giving a talk Wednesday night. Is that right, John? So, of course, my reply was, is it Saturday already? How do I know what I'm talking about Sunday? That was like Wednesday. And interestingly enough, I got here and realized that I had an extra hour. Last week, if you were here or listened to the sermon, we talked about letting go. We talked about that thing called non-attachment. We like to talk about it a lot. Are we really good at it is the question. And how can we become even better? And, you know, a major reason I believe that most of us resist letting go is that we trust our limited perception, our conditioned mind, much more than we trust that transcendent mystery that we call God, that universal presence that is always there. And why do we not trust it? We can't see it, we can't touch it, we can't feel it in a tangible way. And yet, it is what we speak about every time we gather in this place. It's what we know innately, that it is there. It's grace being expressed in any given moment. And to the extent that we can let go during a challenge of our life, during any situation or happenstance that is happening, to that extent, do we really trust the universe or the God of your understanding? Or even, do we trust ourselves? Are we trusting the higher piece of us? You know, another obvious reason that we don't let go is our society. Our culture teaches us otherwise. We are a people of fixing it, getting it done, making it happen. And we are encouraged, especially in Western culture, to either fix something or flee or fight it. And yet, we often can't do any of those things when we are faced with the hardest challenges of our life. I see it every day in the work that I do with the deaf and dying population that I serve. And in the moment that John was texting me and asking me, here's what I'm going to talk about on Wednesday, does it tie in? He had no idea what I was facing in that moment. I was standing beside the bedside of a 2-month-old baby who had been on my hospice service for 13 days without water. When we discharged her from the hospital and took her to the hospice house, we gave her 48 hours at best. I checked this morning, it's now 17 days later, and she's still with us. We don't know why. Her journey is obviously not complete. And we keep telling Mom and Dad, any moment now, any moment now. And I thought all about letting go in a new way. Why isn't this baby letting go? Mom and Dad already have, to a certain extent. They're tired. They've not slept this entire time. They've never left that baby. And probably when they do choose to even walk outside of the room is when she will let go. I see that over and over with the work I do. And isn't that an interesting metaphor? That our culture, our society is watching us all the time. And so we don't let go. What if they weren't watching us? What if the world and our society and peoples and beliefs and understandings that we've been taught over and over and over again were not watching us? Would we let go in a new, easier, more gentle way? You have been studying this book What If It All Goes Right by Mindy Odlin. And it's a great book, isn't it? I've been using it for lots of years in my private practice as well as in my life. And, much of the difficulty that we face in letting go or not letting go is that of fear. And what do we fear the most? Probably just change. Change is the only constant in life, and yet you would think, being the only constant in life, we would be used to it. We would have practiced it over and over, and yet we still face it every day and think, not now, not yet, not me. Many people are fearful of change, both the expected and unexpected. But change offers us the possibility of growing beyond our perceived limitations to the fullness of our divine potential. Sermon title today is The Power of Possibility. How many times have you thought of something that's possible in your life, but you were on the front end of it? The power of possibility really is behind that. It is what Mindy talks about when she describes what's happening at the Hoover Dam or at any dam. We think that in the moment that those turbines start to turn and the power begins to generate and spill the water, that's where the power is. But the power truly is behind the dam. It's in the lake itself. In the instance of the Hoover Dam, it's 100 miles behind it that creates the power, and then the possibility happens. When I hung my shingle to be a coach, I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew it was possible, and it was a good thing because I was getting really tired of what I was doing previously, so something needed to appear. And I knew that I had power behind me, I just hadn't tapped into it. And so I started studying transformation at a different level than I'd ever studied it before. And I noticed that throughout the thread of those who teach and write about transformation, there are really only 3 steps. I don't like that term much, but I'm going to use it. 3 steps of transformation. First, change. There it is again. Change requires separation from the past, from our old life. Change is the first step. It's what requires the separation, the letting go piece. The second step is it ushers in a threshold period of usually not knowing what's next. And that's really where that fear creeps in. We talk about fear and you think the fear of the unknown. We are at the threshold of this possible thing, yet to stand in it, to step into it fully, would mean I have to do something I've never done before. I don't know what it feels like. I don't know what it sounds like. I don't know if I can really do it. And the third step or stage of transformation is that it paves the way for a return to the world. We call it rebirth in religion and philosophical ideas and theology. That rebirth to what, though? We often think it's the rebirth of who I'm going to become, right? But truly it is the rebirth of and to our true nature. The rebirth that Mindy talks about in her book is understanding it at a deeper level. She mentions the late anthropologist Victor Turner, who is a great writer of transformation. And he identified those 3 stages very clearly. And he termed the second one, that one that I call the threshold period, as this. He calls it the time between no longer and not yet. I love that. It's kind of in the middle. It's as if we're floating above something, right? He says this, we have died to who we were, but are not yet reborn to whom we might become. We're at the doorway, at the threshold. What is that threshold? It is the threshold of potentiality. Face to face with the possibility of whatever is to become and whatever is that we are, truly, deeper, at a deeper and deepest level. You know, when the Israelites escaped slavery in Egypt, which, by the way, in Hebrew, Egypt means the narrow place. When they escaped that place, that narrow place, they had to wander in the desert for 40 years. Metaphysically, I could preach a whole sermon series over just that piece. But isn't that what we're often doing? We go through all of those narrow places where we are challenged to let go of an old belief or a habit or a pattern within our life. And those are just doing what in the moment, but limiting us from the potential that lies on the other side of that threshold. We just sang about it. We are unlimited and free. And yet we stand on the threshold so much of the time, still bound to the old, not wanting to move. One of my favorite parts of the book that you're studying is when Mindy talks about, are you a thermometer or a thermostat? Have you read that yet? It's a great piece in the book, and it's a great metaphor for who we are and who we are surrounded by. She says that a thermometer, as we all know, reflects back the current condition. So you've probably got a thermometer at home. It reflects that it's cold outside. If it's hot outside, it reflects that. But a thermostat is different. We set it, and then whatever is happening around it, it just kind of keeps the balance. It kicks on when it needs to. And she asked the question, which are you? Are you the one who is just always going with and fighting against and just reflecting back what's happening in your current situation in the world? Or are you more centered and set in peace, in joy, in love? I encourage you to read that part of the book, because when she talks about it, she identifies that if we are living in a place where the thermometer is the reflection, we become a victim. That victim mentality creeps in. And she says this, all victim stories are created through the power of imagination. And the same imaginative power that creates our victim stories creates our victor stories. We've been talking about imagination for weeks now, right? And the wisdom that guides us through that process. What I like to say is everything's a story. Everything's a story. I have people on my couch all the time who are, maybe they've been married for 20, 25 years, and they're coming to me for relationship coaching, which is really interesting considering I'm not in one. Not been real good at them, and yet they keep appearing at my door to tell them what to do. But I often tell them to just look at each other. Look at the person you're with, the person you're living with. And I say, you've never met that person. I could tell you to look at the person next to you right now, and I would be able to tell you, you've never met that person. You've only ever met your story of that person. You have a great story about them, most of the time. And when your story is of love, of peace, of serenity, of harmony, it's a great story. But in the moment that they show up with their own, and they don't match your story anymore, you just kind of want to leave the movie, right? That story is like the projector in your mind. They are just your screen. And all of a sudden, you're tired of this movie. I don't like it so much. I think I'll go get popcorn or just go next door and sneak into a different one. Whatever the case may be. Mindy says this, you free your imagination to create a new reality or a new story when you are able to release the old stories and see yourself as the hero that you are. Some time ago, I used to travel with certain movies that were coming out, and when they went, I think I've told this to you before, when they would go to film festivals or appear for the first time in a theater or at a festival, I would go and open for it and be able to do an introduction, and then at the end of it do a Q&A with the producers and the stars. And one particular movie was called I Am. Anyone ever watched that movie? Yeah, it's a great movie. I got to tour with that for a little while. It's an amazing film. And one of the things that the producer and the director did with that movie is they looked at different animals in nature and how they were responding. And they showed the birds in a flock. They showed deer in the herd. They showed schools of fish. And they asked the question, why or how do they know when to change course? When does the geese all of a sudden know to move in order? And how do the fish know when to turn so quickly? And so as they slowed the film down, they were able to see that it was only when 51% of them made the decision to do so, that's when they all moved. We call that collective consciousness. We're doing it all the time, even within ourselves. When 51% of you says, I'm going to go this way instead, that's the tipping point, right? I want to point something out today because as I was thinking about this term possibility throughout the week, you know I didn't write the sermon until last night, but throughout the week I did think of it. And I kept using the word probable instead. It just kind of was in my mind. But isn't there a difference between possible and probable? So I began to kind of look at that in a new way and wonder, how is it that I'm using that language, even in my mind before it becomes out of my mouth, and not understanding the difference? So here's the difference. Possibility is as unlimited as our imagination. We know that. That's what we've been saying over and over. So defining these two terms begins to create that deeper awareness of what is possible from even the most elementary of places. Something that is possible may or may not come to be. It's possible it will. It's possible it won't. There's no statistical insight. It's merely an outcome that may or may not come to pass. It is possible that you could get hit by lightning today. It's possible that you could win the lottery tomorrow. But is it probable? I hope for you that it's the second one. So probability is the term for the branch of statistics dealing with chance and outcome. And here is a great thing. As I was kind of studying that, and I got into my hotel last night, and I wanted to make sure that I understood it so that I could say it to you. I'm just going to read it to you because I didn't memorize it. Anything that is probable must, by definition, be possible. However, not everything that is possible is going to be probable. Did you get that? It's interesting because so much of the time we tell the story probably. How many times do we use that word? That's probably going to happen. We see the economic forecast and we begin to live into the probability of it, right? And that is us being the thermometer instead of the thermostat. There is a wonderful section in the book that you're reading that talks about the metaphor with the mountaintop. You know, every master teacher that we really read about and study has gone to the mountain, whether it was physically, literally, or just within their mind. And I love that Mindy used that mountaintop understanding in such a beautiful and precise way as to bring our awareness to the truth with a capital T. She said this: action is only as valuable as the consciousness from which it is inspired. The mountaintop is the higher consciousness, right? The highest consciousness, already innate within you. Many of you know, a couple of weeks ago, I had the great honor and pleasure of legally marrying Mary and Sue from your congregation as they had their wedding here and then traveled to Tulsa for me to actually sign on the dotted line where it's legal. And I said at their little ceremony these words: a mountain needs a valley to be complete. The valley does not make the mountain less, but more. And the valley is more a valley because it has a mountain towering beside it. I love that. It's not that we're always going to be on the mountaintop. It's not that we're always going to be in this higher place of consciousness. But we can climb there, we can get there, and when in those times of difficulty, of challenge, it's okay to be in the valley, because that's when we see and understand differently. When we're on the mountain, we can see all of this is always well. It's okay. But when we're in the valley, we can't see as much. We just seem to be stuck in that moment, in that place. I said when I gave a couple of years ago, I was honored to give the talk at World Day of Prayer at Unity Village. And it was their 20th anniversary of that particular festival. And we had hundreds of people there and tens of thousands watching worldwide, no pressure at all. And I gave a talk that talked about my own challenges in life, those of health and financial worry. And I said that I had come to understand at a very deep level that what I was doing was kind of being that thermometer. I was struggling my way to healing, or so I was trying. But the truth is, you can't struggle your way to healing. You can't struggle your way to joy. You joy your way to joy. You heal your way to healing. You prosper your way to prosperity. There's no struggle in it. If we can set the thermostat of our consciousness, of our heart, with the peace and serenity that we know is innate within us. When she talked about that understanding of going to the mountain and being able to see everything in the valley and all that was well, I have to tell you this funny little story. I think you know I used to raise foster children, and there was a time in my life when I traveled a lot, and so I had a friend who asked if I would accompany her little girl to grandma's house by plane because I was going that way, so that worked out really well. Even though I thought, oh good, this is my moment of peace and serenity from my own kids. Now I've got someone else's on an airplane. So I let her sit next to the window. It was her first flight ever. And she was 10, 11 years old. And so she looked down and she just kept staring and staring. And, you know, we all have done that. Even if you've been in an airplane 100 times, you kind of are in awe. And I said, what do you think? What's going on in your mind? Oh, I don't know that I could keep my poker face, because she said, where are the lines? She was looking for the outline or the border of each state. She had seen it on the maps in school, and she kept saying, where are the lines? How do I know which state we're around? Wisdom of a child, right? So isn't that true, though? We are often on that mountaintop, in that plane, in that higher consciousness, seeing below from a different perspective. We've said the scripture today already. For God, all things are possible. And God in this is that higher consciousness. In that higher place of us, all things are possible. I'm going to invite you, if you will, to just allow yourself to stand on the threshold for a moment. close your eyes if it feels comfortable. Think about that thing in your life, that circumstance, that situation, maybe that person that you have so wanted to see change happen. It's not them that you're wanting to see the change in. The change happens within. And before you see the manifestation of that which you're hoping for, your own intuitive relationship between what you are thinking and what the source of your being, that higher consciousness, that divine intelligence within you knew, gave you the knowing that all is well. That knowing, that superconscious part of you, is summoning all the things that are the vibrational equivalents of that which you are asking for. Ask, why am I not stepping into it? What am I fearing? And when you finally get it, that the universe is only answering your vibration, then you're going to understand that if you are victim to anything, it's simply your haphazard vibration in this moment. So give it a new vibration. Tell a new story. Perhaps your new story could simply be this: I want to vibrate on purpose. I want to prepare and get ready and become still and know that all of the power that is needed is already behind me. The universe is going to conspire with you about anything that you are a vibrational match to. You came to this church, to this sanctuary, to the very seat that you're sitting in. You came into this existence, into this lifetime, into this time of being as the very vibration of a higher power, of a greater consciousness. You are consciousness. You are a stream of consciousness. And when you feel anything other than that, you simply have a different opinion than that of your highest consciousness. The what if up process is the one that is always beckoning you to be able to take that next step. It's like entering a playground, and the playmates are all of the universal principles that have ever existed. If you vibrate with the conviction that it is possible to rise to a higher and even highest potential, you're affirming that the unlimited positive essence which is everywhere present is just that. Call it possibility. Call it potentiality. What I would like to call it is certainty, because it already exists. That which you are asking for is. It is certain. Step into it. Know it. Live it and be it. Sue texted me at midnight last night. She needs one more week off. I didn't know how I was going to do that. Her doctor said she's just needing a little more time to heal. And then I began. What if I could move one more thing on my calendar? And by 8 o'clock this morning, I can say I'll see you next week.